Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about memory organization. So just to review from our last lesson, encoding information into long-term memory. Encoding is transferring information or getting information into long-term memory from short-term memory to long-term memory. We talked about maintenance rehearsal and elaborative rehearsal. Maintenance rehearsal being just simply repeating something over and over, and elaborative rehearsal making personal connections to yourself. Okay, we also talked about the levels of processing. So how deeply you process information is going to determine how much easier or more readily the information will be there to recall for later. Okay, so effortful processing is important. Effortful processing is something that we do consciously. We intentionally do it. This is different from automatic processing. Automatic processing happens unconsciously, like it's a non-conscious information processing. So this is somehow like how sometimes you maybe you remember the lyrics to a song that you don't really like, but you don't know how that information got there. Well, it could be due to automatic processing. So now the key is that effortful processing can become automatic with practice. For example, what words mean. It could also be something like riding a bike, like at first, or even walking. You had to really practice, you had to really be deliberate about what you were doing, but now you just kind of do it without thinking about it. So it's important to note that this is different than the levels of processing theory. So effortful versus automatic processing is different from shallow, intermediate, and deep processing. But if you can master these things, you can be a memory whiz, I guess. Some encoding strategies. So you can use mnemonics to help better encode information. So mnemonics being like, every good boy does fine for the letters of the lines on a staff of music, or for the cardinal directions, never eat soggy waffles. Or if you wanted to remember the different Great Lakes, you could remember the acronym HOMES for Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. So you can use the spacing effect. And the spacing effect simply means you need to give your brain time to, you need to leave space in between study sessions, because when you cram information in there, you're more likely to forget what you are studying. Think about it in terms of working out. So if you work out every day for 30 minutes, well, why not just work out, one day for like 5 hours? Well, you're probably thinking that's pretty silly because my muscles need time to rest and recover. Your brain is kind of the same way. Your brain isn't a muscle, but it does process information in the same way that your muscles do. Self-reference. So self-reference effect is when you include personal details to help you remember something. Visual memory, when we tie information into using visual or iconic information. So we're going to watch a short video about that now. And then the method of loci. So using a sense of direction and visual memory to memorize stuff. So this is actually a technique used by the ancient Greeks. So we'll watch a short video about that now. The important thing here is that practice is important. Meaning what we're looking at here is a GIF of the forgetting curve. And that means, so retention over days. So 100% retention from 0 days. After 1 day, you could probably remember about 80% without practicing. After 2 days, you're down to about, I'd say about 65 or 70%, and so on and so forth. But you notice if you study again, that information, you'll retain it for longer. So one thing that I always do, or what helped me when I was learning about psychology, was before a class started, I would just briefly go over my notes from the day before. And then this would help me be like, oh, okay, so this is what we learned. I don't mean like do an intense study session, just kind of look over what we did the day before. And that's going to guarantee that you're going to remember more information for this class. Okay, and if you were curious, the guy who discovered the forgetting curve was a man named Ebbinghaus, Ebbinghus. Definitely worth checking out, pretty interesting guy. So we talked about sensory memory and short-term memory or working memory, and now we're going to talk about long-term memory. And long-term memory breaks down into a whole bunch of other subtypes as well. And we're going to look at those subtypes right now. So long-term memory breaks down into a couple of different subcategories. So there is musical memory, which we're not going to talk about, but I think it's really interesting because when you look at, for example, Alzheimer's patients, you can play them a song that was relevant to them and it can trigger memories, which imply, even though they can't remember the names of their family members or something like that. So it implies that there's a different sense, a system of memory devoted just to melody and song and things like that. Basically what we have to divide long-term memory into is that which you can recall actively or consciously and that which you recall unconsciously. So declarative memory is the kind of memory that's easy to verbalize. The process of this, the conscious recall, is called explicit. So explicit memory or declarative memory. It's easy to verbalize. For example, episodic memory, which we talked a little bit about. Episodic memory are personal experiences relevant to you, as if every day of your life was an episode of a TV show, right? So you can remember what you had yesterday for dinner, but I wouldn't know that because I wasn't there, as far as you know. Semantic memory is your knowledge of just general knowledge of facts and things like that. So, you know, knowing the capital of Missouri or I don't know, like the difference between your, and your, or there, and there. These are all semantic facts. When you combine these together, you get autobiographical memory. So it's a combination of information relevant to you and fact-based information. And what they've discovered within the last 10 years is there are people with a condition called hyperthymesia. And hyperthymesia is perfect autobiographical recall of one's own life. We're going to watch a video about that right now. The other type of long-term memory is non-declarative or implicit memory. So this is, you retrieve this information effortlessly, but it's hard to put into words. So for example, if you know how to whistle, it's hard to explain to someone who doesn't know how to whistle how that works, or how to ride a bike. You don't really think about it, you just do it. That's because it's an implicit or non-declarative process. So procedural memory is our knowledge of skills and tasks, how to ride a bike, how to do a backflip on a pogo stick, how to do a cartwheel, how to snap your fingers or whistle or any of those kinds of things. Priming is another example of this. So priming is a change in response due to previous exposure to a stimulus. So here is an example of priming, okay? I'm going to show you some images and I just want you to, at your computer, say them out loud as you see them. Now finish this sentence. Now, if the first thing you saw was soap, that's because I primed you. I showed you some different stimuli that were similar to that, and that caused you to think soap instead of soup. The last thing I want to talk to you about is how your brain processes long-term memory in the long term. So there are a couple of different structures that are associated with this. So the hippocampus is one. So the hippocampus is helps in making memories. The basal ganglia also is as part of this, and the cerebellum as well. So the cerebellum and basal ganglia tend to be more of the implicit kinds of things, or the non-declarative memory processing, whereas the hippocampus is more declarative. And I would also say that the cerebral cortex, or specifically the frontal lobe, has to do with that as well. Now, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my God, what, don't worry. We'll get into brain stuff in the next unit. So you don't need to know this yet, but I just kind of want to put this on your radar. And that is all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day.